What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports hall of fame, like Chick-fil-A chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is the president of ERA Real Estate, Alex Vidal, who oversees operations for more than 40,000 affiliated brokers and sales associates across 2,400 offices worldwide. Alex is a lifelong real estate professional and has channeled the mental toughness and resilience gained from triathlons into his leadership approach, including his recent completion of his first ever Ironman, one of the toughest competitions on the planet. His commitment to personal discipline has not only propelled his professional achievements, but has also defined his leadership style.
Look at all these great things that happened to me today. Some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail. One day I was the nail, and I wrote down the 5 things for which I was grateful for, and I like to write them down. And I said to myself, man, I still don't feel any better. So I went ahead and I just kept writing. I had like 25 things on a sheet of paper, and it hit me. Look at all these great things that happened to me today, but yet I let that one thing distract me. Like when you ride a bike, you look to the right, you go to the right. I let that one thing take my attention away from all the great things.
Alex, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Don. I'm so stoked to be on. You have quite the resume of guests. So to be able to join this class is humbling, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
You just finished Ironman Texas. So you're a perfect fit. 2.4 miles swimming, bike 112. You get off the bike and run a full marathon, 26.2.
That's correct.
So how are you feeling today?
I feel great. The first 2 days were pretty gnarly. I remember driving up from Houston with my friends in the car, and we stopped at a Buc-ee's gas station. And
everybody should stop at Buc-ee's.
Yes, that's a marathon in and of itself. So
isn't that the truth?
That probably took me about 4 days, and then I'm already getting ready for Alcatraz now.
Unbelievable. I know Alcatraz is a race. It doesn't mean he's being sent there. But now you completed the race in a little over 13 hours.
Correct.
But you put in 500 hours of training.
Just shy of 500. Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself putting that much effort into getting ready for a race that's over in a day?
You may also not even finish the race.
Right.
20 or 25% of the starters didn't finish. I interviewed about 3 or 4 different coaches who told me, we can't get you ready in time. You need 8-9 months. You only have 5 months. We can't get you ready. And I had one coach who ultimately believed in me, but more importantly, I believed in myself that I could make it happen. As long as you believe in yourself, anything's possible. Assuming you have a plan. My coach took the guesswork out of it. I woke up every day knowing exactly what I needed to do, and having somebody in my life that had that experience prior that I could rely and trust on definitely made the process easier. You will face setbacks. I was actually injured twice over the course of the training. My first injury, which was my ankle injury, prohibited me from doing my favorite discipline, which is running, forced me to do my least favorite discipline, which was swimming. And ultimately, I got out of the water feeling really good and had the best swim of any race I've ever done. Felt like, honestly, like I could swim forever. You have to be willing to take really big risk. As you alluded to, Don trained almost 500 hours for what was ultimately a 13-hour, 19-minute and 29 seconds. Every second counts.
Count them off, brother.
Yeah. You have to enjoy the journey. Imagine being miserable for 5 months and 500 hours, 400 hours to then potentially not even be able to finish.
Right.
Between people who panicked in the water, or our conditions on race day were super windy on the bike, and a lot of people wrecked and didn't finish, or they bonked on the run or passed out on the run. And you're not even guaranteed that you're going to cross the finish line.
Mm.
So you have to be able to enjoy the journey. And that happened as a result of stacking wins along the way. My coach would allow me to build the confidence that I had the mental fortitude to be there 2 hours and be there 2.5 and be there 3. And when I started, what seemed to be an extraordinary event almost in my mind has become an ordinary thing for me.
You just kept interviewing coaches till you found one that told you what you wanted to hear.
1,000,000%.
The first few told you don't have enough time. But coach actually then said, the reason I can reduce the time required is because I believe that you'll do the things required.
Correct. I just needed to know how to get there. I knew I could do it. I just didn't know how. I needed to find somebody that could show me the how. It was on my vision board. I already actually signed up for the race and paid the $1,000 fee before I even had a coach. So there was no going back. I already had paid anyways. I truly felt I could get it done. I just needed to know how. And it was finding a coach that said, okay, I'll get you there.
How are you applying that kind of lesson at ERA?
Here's what's really interesting. The Ironman to me is the widget. It just happened to be that I was running an Ironman or racing an Ironman. For some people, it could be running a 5K. For some people, it can be starting a business. For some people, it can be launching a new initiative in their company. The basic principles are still the same. Whatever your quote unquote Ironman is, you have to be able to believe in yourself. Understand that you're going to have to surround yourself with maybe somebody who's been there or similar along the lines that can guide you there. You're going to need a plan. Absolutely a how.
Setbacks are real.
Oh, setbacks are not only real, but at the same time, you have to learn how to pivot and see how you can move forward even with the setback. Stack those wins. Understand that you may put those 400, 500 hours in and completely fail, and you got to be willing, but no great thing is worth pursuing without the risk of failure.
Which means you have to enjoy the journey.
You have to.
You're no stranger to races. You've done more than 30.
That's right.
You love them because it mirrors other aspects of your life. Do you learn a different lesson each time? Does each one bring something new to you? Tell me about that.
That's a great question. Alcatraz probably taught me that even when you feel like you're legit going to die, you can push through and it's nowhere near as bad as you think it's going to be. So much so that I said I would never race Alcatraz again. And here I am racing it again. And rather than being nervous about the swim, I'm really excited. So I faced a fear. I used to think triathlons were a very lonely sport.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people want to swim an hour and a half in the pool with you. Not many people are going to be in the house with you for 6 hours while you're on a trainer. Don, let's go run 20 miles together.
Okay.
Most people won't say yes to that. And Ironman taught me that I don't think I would have ever crossed the finish line if it wasn't for my friends that were there. And more importantly, on the run, it's just a grind and you're really going through it mentally, physically. My buddy Brian's filming me coming up to him and he gives me a big hug. He's like, how you feeling? I'm like, I'm dying right now. And he goes, I'm going to run with you. And then I got that extra boost of energy. But I cried during that moment of just self-doubt, pain. Like, what am I doing right now to myself? Why did I sign up for this? And I can't wait to do the next one, actually. I already got the Ironman tattoo as well.
You've already got it.
Right calf. Absolutely.
You know, I'd love to ask about the vision board.
Sure.
I have a number of folks that are in my circle who are dedicated to their vision board. When did you first craft a vision board?
There's a lot of noise in our lives, personally, professionally, and I'm a complete open book. So in January of last year, my ex-wife and I decided we want a divorce. Quite frankly, I was lost. Not professionally, but personally, didn't really know what I was waking up to. I mean, I have my boys and I love my boys and they're my purpose. I do think that where people fail in life is not having a purpose outside of their kids, like a personal purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But I just didn't know what I was waking up to. I traveled down to Miami and I was sitting on the beach by myself. Very weird experience. First time that had ever really kind of happened for me. All disclosure, I felt lonely and it started raining. okay, it's time to go. Nobody wants to be on the beach when it's raining. And as I was walking to my car, Don, it's the weirdest thing. I was overcome with immense gratitude for everything that had been happening. And I just realized I needed to now focus that gratitude towards intention. I crafted this board. It's not pictures. Most people, when they see my vision board, they ask me, why didn't you do pictures? I don't want to have to interpret the picture. So I wanted to write it out. And that's kind of how it manifested into what it was. And created this board knowing that there were many relationships that I had personally lost in the divorce. And that's fine. So I had to take inventory of the actual relationships that I did have and build on that. I have a quote across the top that says, between disappointment and greatness is opportunity and choice. I have my financial goals, I have my physical goals, and then I have other things that I want to accomplish. When it's on that board, when things are presented in your life, if they don't get me closer to what's on that board, I can easily say no. I call them sacrifices because I did say no to certain events that to me in theory would be a lot of fun. Like I was invited to some really cool trips or some really great concerts that I wouldn't be able to go on a Friday night because I knew I'd be getting home at 3 a.m. and not when you got to wake up at 5, you just can't do it.
Right.
Last night was Cinco de Mayo.
Right.
Where do you think most of my friends are? And I canceled all my plans to launch our coaching program where we would be the only real estate brand that would be coaching agents from a national level, where the actual brand president, which is what I do, would be coaching the agents. Well, guess what? Today was session number 1. I just wrapped up right before we started this podcast, and we have 49% of our offices participating with over 3,000 agents participating. Imagine being hungover and having to do this via Zoom and bring the energy. And that's why you have to be able to enjoy the journey along the way.
Yeah.
Here's what's really interesting. In 1 week, Don, on Sunday, I escaped Alcatraz. On Wednesday, I got promoted. And on Friday, I closed on my new house.
Wow.
I'll never forget it. And it was because when I did that board, I literally woke up and anything and everything that I did went towards what was on that board. I attacked it with massive, massive intention. Check mark, check mark, check mark. And I was in North Carolina. And one of our realtors asked me why I think that people fell off the motivation bus. It came at an interesting time in my life because I never reset my goals. And I think there's a lot of people that look down upon that in our culture because the goal line's always moving. It's not that the goal line's always moving. It's another game. I found myself in this personal rut because I didn't know what I was waking up towards besides my boys and my job. For me, like what was my individual purpose as a man, as a human? That night, I got back from North Carolina. I signed up for the Ironman. It's time to start a new game.
It's infinite.
Always hunting.
So you've created your personal vision board. Have you thought about applying vision boards into how you navigate your leadership?
Sure, absolutely. So in our business, the agents are ultimately the ones that generate the revenue.
Correct.
I always joke with them that I'm not the boss, they are, because I'm an expense to the company. They are the ones. So ultimately, they're the boss. And my number one goal is to make them raving fans of not only ERA, but their brokerage as well. So the number one thing I have on my vision board is everything that I need to do to make our agents raving fans. The next thing I have is how I go about making the actual franchise owners raving fans of ERA. A lot of that has to do with making their agents happy, because if their agents are happy, living a better life and making more money, that automatically is going to make them more money and they're going to be my raving fan. But there are other things that we're going to do to help them themselves living a better life and making more money as well. Then I have a third customer, my employees, my team. How do I make my customers, my employees, raving fans of ERA? And then I have the actual financial goals that we're trying to hit as a franchise. That's all great and dandy. The biggest thing is to take care of the agents. You have your big goal. There's 4 or 5 things you need to do on a daily basis to make that goal come to fruition. Which one do you think is most important? Circle that one. That's where you spend 80% of your time, the Pareto principle. If I want to make my brokers raving fans, my agents raving fans, and hit all my financial metrics, I spend 80% of my time making sure my agents are living better lives and making more money. That will literally be the biggest domino to take care of everything else. Because then my broker owners are complaining less, which makes my employees sell more, make more money. It just literally takes care of everything.
By putting all of this on a wall, front and center, I mean, literally every day, you can't avoid walking by it. If it becomes truly your non-negotiables, decision making becomes a little easier for you on other things. That is where my attention needs to be. That's where my time needs to be. What a powerful process that's been for you.
It has been. And I have it literally in my living room. So I have about a 60-inch TV in my living room. And right next to my TV on both sides are my personal vision board to the left and my business board to the right of the TV. Front and center, right next to my desk as well. When you're interested in making a goal happen, you'll do it when times are great, but you'll always find something that'll come up that'll deter you from making your goal come to fruition. But if you're committed to your goal, no matter what comes your way, no matter what obstacle, no matter how you're feeling, you're always going to do whatever it takes to make that goal come to fruition. And having those vision boards in front of me are a constant reminder of what I'm committed to. There's nothing on that board that I'm interested in doing. Everything on that board is what I'm committed to doing. There's a lot of talk about balance. I don't necessarily believe in balance. I think you just make time for what's important to you and you figure out your schedule to make it all work. I get that a lot. How do you do an Ironman and run a company and travel, and your boys come heavily involved in my boys' life? Well, don't watch a lot of TV. Don't go out a lot. Like, those are my priorities. There's not a lot on there. My boards are very concise. If there was a lot on there, then I could see that there would be things that I would quote unquote be interested in. I'm not committed to a lot of things. I'm committed to just a handful of certain things that I want to target. Now, the friends does change because you meet people along the way and people fall off the wagon, like we talked about, because they can't handle your growth. And as you grow, they'll tell you you've changed. And absolutely, I've changed. I want to change. I want to evolve. And not everybody wants that for you, because now all of a sudden your role in their life could potentially change. And that's okay.
Certainly, that is absolutely true. I love it. You mentioned that as of today, you're beginning a process of starting to coach more of your agents. Talk to me about this idea of coaching a group of folks scattered throughout the country, all of whom have individual issues. They have local realtor challenges, whatever it might be. How are you coaching from a macro perspective?
From my living room in shorts and barefoot? Yeah. A couple things. There are certain fundamentals in our business that are the same no matter where you are. You could be in Evansville, Indiana, or you could be in New York City or Miami or a suburb of Dallas, Texas. The macro level, what we talk about really is something that anybody can learn in this business. And the first thing we cover is mindset. I'm of the opinion you can be at the best at what you do. Husband, wife, realtor, broker owner, business leader, whatever. If you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, nothing else matters. And you can work on your mindset the same way you work on your business, the same way you work on your fitness or your nutrition. We cover taking care of our sphere of influence, our direct circle of influence, our customers, our friends, our family. We talk about how we grow that sphere, because ultimately people move out of the area or become realtors themselves, a bunch of different things. And we also talk about outside sources of how to generate business. And the way we do it, essentially, our realtors are not allowed to tune in individually via Zoom. They have to go into their office. And as an office, they tune in to me or my co-host via Zoom. Imagine having 11 or 12 Zoom screens of offices packed with agents across the country, and they are led by a local leader. And we kind of develop this system where we'll go on for a little bit, then we'll give an assignment at the local level, which will allow the local proctor to lead a breakout session or lead a talk on something. Then it'll come back to us. So we're leveraging the power of technology like Zoom to be able to host these quote unquote watch parties. Understand the dynamic of most people is they're not going to watch somebody on Zoom for 2 hours. So at most, we want to keep it to 10 or 15 minutes till we break them out and let them get a taste at the local level and then bring them up. And it was actually thanks to COVID on how we made that happen.
And I know part of this coaching model for you stems from what you learned from Scott. Conquering the world is easier if you wake up every day knowing exactly what you have to do to get closer to your goal. How are you coaching that idea of every day? What do you have to do to get closer to your goal?
Great question. That's spot on. Most realtors do not get up knowing what they need to do each and every day. Because they're independent contractors, we can't exactly tell them what to do, but we give them suggestions. it was an interesting experience for me because last week, for the most part, I was supposed to take it off as recovery from the Ironman, and I recovered sooner rather than probably anticipated. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. What do I do? I started back up with Scott this week for Alcatraz, and I had to look back at a couple of the workouts just to get an idea because I just got so used to knowing what I was waking up to do. Like, it was great not having to think about what I needed to do. So we have suggested activities that they should be doing on a weekly basis. And then what we ask is our local leadership, the local proctor, to then have a Friday meeting with their agents that are participating for an accountability session. We suggest that they do the accountability in a group session because there's nothing worse than having to get in front of a group of people who have done what we've suggested them to do. And you say, I did not do the work.
Right. Yeah. They have to do it first.
Right. A lot of that falls on the local leader. We held an intention exercise today for them to share with the group what their intention was over the next 7 sessions. Why were they there today? Why did you decide to show up at 12 o'clock Eastern for 2 hours to sit with a bunch of your peers and your local leader? What brought you there? Were you trying to get your first listing? Were you trying to get out of a funk? Are you trying to make $100,000 over the next 6 weeks? What was it? It's up to the local leader. Again, because I'm in my living room in Dallas and we have offices across the country, then they shared it with their local leader, and it's on the local leader to have that person holding them accountable. Next week, what are the 4 or 5 things you need to do on a daily basis to get there? If you take care of the most important one, typically 2, 3, 4, and 5 just kind of fall into place. I kind of learned this from my mentor, Emmett, who was at my race coincidentally, and I cried like a baby. He was at the finish line, and you want to talk about all the life lessons he's ever taught me coming into the culmination of something. It was quite the experience. Emmett once asked me, if my life was a movie, what would I want the ending to look like?
Oh, wow. That's a heavy question.
It is. If your life's a movie, what does it look like? What does the ending look like? And that's something we're going to cover longer term. So right now we have, what are their intentions for the 6 weeks, 7 sessions? And then next week, we're going to talk about what's the end of their movie look like at the end of 2024.
Wow. What a great question to ask. What would that look like? So I read that you have a practice of writing down 5 things you're grateful for.
Sure.
On what you consider a good day, 10 on an average day, and 25 on a bad day.
That's correct. It's not measurable. There's a great TED talk by a guy named Sean Aker on happiness. And he talks about your ability to do things when you're in a positive state of mind versus neutral or negative. When you're in a positive state of mind versus neutral or negative, you are 31% more productive and you're 37% better at sales. I did this last week live in front of a group, and I asked the realtors I was speaking to, I said, who wants to share the biggest closing they've ever had? And this guy gets up and he goes, I closed $1.5 million deal. I said, awesome. How'd you feel that day? He goes, man, I felt like I could walk on water. Nobody could stop me. I could talk to anybody. I could sell anything. I felt amazing. Great, man. Okay. Who here wants to share the biggest deal they've ever had fall through? And this gentleman gets up. He was working with a professional boxer who was under contract for $3.5 million home. The day of the closing, he's sitting at the closing. The boxer ghosted him, never called him. Deal falls through. Very substantial paycheck. I asked him how he felt. He goes, I got in bed and cried. I didn't want to talk to anybody. So I like to do things above and beyond. Sean talks about doing 3 things for which you're grateful for. I'm like, I'm going to do 5. I have a saying, some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail. One day I was the nail, and I wrote down the 5 things for which I was grateful for. And I like to write them down. Putting pen to the paper kind of takes ownership of the things that you're writing out. And I said to myself, man, I still don't feel any better. I still feel like crap. So I went ahead and I just kept writing and I kept writing and I kept writing. And ultimately I got to a point to where I had like 25 things on a sheet of paper, and it hit me. Look at all these great things that happened to me today. The secret is not repeating yourself. I'm not grateful every day. I am, but I don't write it down that I'm president of ERA. Look at all these great things that happened to me today. But yet I let that one thing distract me. Like when you ride a bike, you look to the right, you go to the right. I let that one thing take my attention away from all the great things. So I had this rule, 5 and 25. 5 on a great day, 25 on a bad day. And I had my kids doing this. This was a few years ago. My son Aiden was 13 at the time. And he's like, hey, daddy, I have a question for you. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. So on a great day, 5 things. On a bad day, 25. What if I have an okay day? That's a great question, Aiden. Well, what do you think we should do? He said, how about 10? Deal. It's funny. We're sitting here talking. Here's my book right here.
Wow. Last thing you do before you go to bed.
Sit on my couch, write down whether 5, 10, or 25.
I love it. We've been fascinated by the concept of momentum in a lot of these conversations with executives. Those of us who appreciate sports can see or feel momentum during a contest. In business, have you ever had something happen where in the process a spark occurred, some sale or call or whatever it might have been, suddenly things took off for your team? Has there ever been one of those kind of moments for you where you've seen momentum at play in your business?
Yes, life has ebbs and flows. I think a lot of people think that they lose momentum entirely. I'm not a believer in that. I believe as long as you're alive and kicking, there's momentum. It may not be moving as fast as you'd like it to be. The bike is a great example. When I was biking into that headwind during the Ironman, my average pace was like 12, 13 miles an hour. It was a beat down. It was almost demoralizing to a certain extent, especially on the second lap. But when you hit that tailwind, I was going 27, 30 miles an hour. I wasn't even pedaling almost, and I was getting pushed. Even though I was going 12, 13 miles an hour into the headwind, I was still moving. I still had momentum. I look at momentum as long as I'm alive, I have momentum. At times, you're going to face headwinds, and at times, you're going to face tailwinds. And what allows you to face both of them is you got to keep moving. You got to keep punching.
Right.
What I call those breakthrough moments, a lot of times are a culmination of a lot of work. Like my Ironman was a breakthrough moment, but there were a lot of small victories that ultimately led to it. There are several throughout my career, and I would tell you the common denominator among every single one, it didn't just happen. There were a lot of little wins that ultimately led up to that quote unquote breakthrough moment that you're kind of referring to. Even today, the coaching program that we launched took quite a long time for it to get approved, and we finally were able to launch it today. But while that was going on, we were able to get out into the field and do them in person, or we were able to do national one-day sales rallies for an hour. Oftentimes in business, we see people's highlight reels, particularly in the world of social media that we're in today. Yes, that's great, but there's so much work that happened below the surface that nobody realized. Actually, I think Damon John said it best. I'm an overnight 7 years in the making.
Yeah.
That's a very real thing.
Right. Alex, I've appreciated getting to know you today. I'm honored that we had the chance to have you as a corporate competitor.
Oh, I'm the one that feels honored. I'm eternally grateful. I really appreciate the opportunity, Don.
Man, I would love to be coached by Alex. If there's anything I saw here today and everything that he said, intention matters. I love the discussion around his vision board. First off, it's right there, front and center, in his living room, both sides of his television. It's on all the time, even when the TV's not. I could see it in the background. Having those goals in front of him allowed him to say no to other things. He was very careful about making sure that the things he put on his board there were things he was not just interested in, but things he was committed to. And he only had one or two things in each one of those portions of his life so that he could make sure that he can get to work on those things today. Intention, focused gratitude, so powerful. In the Ironman, I love the description he had about the 4 things he learned. Number 1, you need to believe in yourself. Find people who will coach you, been there before, who believe in you too, and will instill that belief. Number 2, you're going to have setbacks. Know that in advance. Be ready. Don't let them stop you. Number 3, because the risk is so big, you have to enjoy the journey. Because if it's just about getting to the end, sometimes you don't make it to the end. As he said, 25% of those who start the race don't finish. And then finally, when he talked about stacking wins, you're not setting out to swim for 2.4 miles at the beginning. You're setting out to swim for a half mile at first and then a little bit longer. And you're stacking wins one on top of each other until the point that 2.4 miles seems easier. And then finally, I loved his idea about being grateful. He writes 5 things that he's grateful for when he's had a good day, 10 on an average day, an okay day, but 25 things on a bad day. But each opportunity is a way for him to feel more grateful for the opportunities that he has to change the world. So many of the lessons that I learned today remind me of those I learned from a co-author team of mine, Chris and Nick Nikic. Chris became the first person with Down syndrome to complete an Ironman. In episode 83 of this podcast, they shared some of what they learned in becoming 1% better every day. Alex was a great inspiration for me today. I hope he was for you as well. Thank you for joining me as a corporate competitor today. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Feedback helps us spread the insights of our guests to a wider audience. It actually increases our ratings. Thank you so much for those who have done so in the past. And catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.